So hello and welcome back to episode 13 of the season on the Champ.ie podcast, and this week it's the Clarence House Chase preview and featuring special guest Ruth Jefferson. I'm joined by all the regulars, Ronan Groome from the Irish Field, Mike Vince from SAS HQ, and back with us again Davy Boland from Racing's Inside Track TV. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Very good, thank you.
Well, Barry.
I'm doing as well as that clock is that used to be behind you. Thank you for asking.
And big news last night, lads, a bit of a bombshell. David Mullins has retired from being a jockey. Thoughts on that, Mike?
It's sad to see a real talent go. I mean, I saw that ride he gave Ken Boy to win at Leopardstown, and it was a truly outstanding ride. But I was lucky because I'm track presenter at Aintree. I remember him winning the Grand National, and then everybody was expecting him into the world's press to talk about it. And he had to go out and ride the conditional jockeys race afterwards, and Julie won that as well. And so unexpectedly, that left me to actually race. And he looked me in the eye, and he quite clearly couldn't take in what he'd achieved. Lovely fella. If it's what he wants to do, I wish him well. As he got his eyes on trying to do something about like cousin Emmett. If so, wonder whether a training license might appear in the next 3 or 4 years. Above all, we wish him luck. And after that horrific injury at Thurles, I'm glad he's getting out in one piece.
Absolutely. Long time friend of the podcast, David Mullins. I suppose slagged him. I said, if all else fails, maybe he could get a job selling Mercedes cars. I think he's got a recent new one there. But look at what a career as well. Just a short career, but 211 Irish winners, 9 Grade 1s. Obviously, you might mention the Grand National and everything in between. Davy, what I suppose big shock to everyone.
Yeah, it was, but it was interesting to see that he said that it's something that's been in his back of his mind for the last year or 18 months, and I suppose that's from the fall. And yeah, look, I suppose he's gone out on his own terms. It'd be very easy for him to carry on. He's in a good job there with Willys, riding good horses. Plenty of other people would have carried on, but if it's not what he wants to do, he's made the right decision. So he's only young. It's crazy to think he's only 24, but he'll do well whatever he takes up anyway.
Certainly best of luck to David. Lads, before we preview the big race at Ascot on Saturday, the Clarence House, we're going to take the Grade 3 handicap hurdle on the cards, the 150 matchbook. Better way to bet Holloway's handicap hurdle is a Grade 3 over 2 miles and 3.5 furlongs. I'll give you a quick show of betting very quickly. Lightly squeezed for Harry Fry 4-1. Danny Kerwin 5-1. Ronan, you were slagging me. I couldn't pronounce Aradirci.
You still can't.
Still can't pronounce it. 6-1. Craig Nish 7-1. Janika. That's the first run for 343 days for Darrell Jacob and Nicky Henderson. That's a 7-1 shot. Cateson was winner last time at Aintree. 8-1. Dan's Levent 12-1. Paddy's motorbike 12-1, and Bodox has 14-1. The rest. Roland, we'll come to you on this one. Had you thought, I suppose the ones at the top of the betting, would you be inclined to find something at a bigger price?
Well, I was hoping it would be a bigger price, but it's not. It's actually towards the top of the betting now. I really like Janica here for Nicky Henderson. Is top weight and he's coming back over hurdles. And I was hoping that maybe the price might hold up a bit till Saturday, or there might be a few of the other horses would have been declared, like Benson and things like that. But they haven't been, and he's been kind of supported a bit in the market. Look, he's come back over hurdles. He's obviously a near top class chaser. He on this card last year he ran 4th to Deputy Doyle in the Clarence House, so that tells you the kind of standard he is over fences. And he's coming back over hurdles here now off like a £13 lower mark. I just think he's potentially well handicapped. He's got a nice record, fresh as well. He won the Haldon Gold Cup at Exeter first time out last season off a big weight. He won that off 162. He was second on his last start. He was second to Riders on the Storm here in the Grade 1, the 2 mile 5 Grade 1. So he's near enough top class over fences, and if he can transfer, a good section of that ability back over hurdles, he's got to have a huge chance. Goes well fresh, probably well handicapped. First start off a wind up. He just ticked a lot of boxes for me. I can see there's a couple of interesting ones in there, but I don't think it's a hugely deep race. I mean, Lightly Squeeze ran really well the last day in the big handicap hurdle there just before Christmas, the one that Not So Sleepy won. Arriva Dirce, I think, will be better suited by coming over 3 furlongs extra. John Joe Neal got off in the last day in that race. That Not So Sleepy one just said he was flat to the boards, full out. The pace that Not So Sleepy went up front just didn't suit him. So coming over 3 furlongs extra will suit him, I think. But I just keep coming back to Janica. I think he's really well handicapped, so he'll do for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ronan. He had plenty of racing in France before he came over and made his British debut back in December 2018. But he's down, I suppose, he's only had the one run over hurdles in Britain. And as you said, his run at Cheltenham behind Somerville Boy, 6.5 lengths back in January of 20. He was running off a mark there of 158. So he's come right back down to 147. I thought he was very interesting, as you said, win that first time. Davey, did you anything hidden away here?
I agree with a lot of what Ronan's after saying. I like this horse. I've backed him a couple of times before. He is well handicapped over hurdles compared to his chase mark, all right. I like Brian Hughes' horse for last week guest Tom Lacey. Cates, and I wouldn't really mind it's 2 runs back. It being its first run in over 230 days, I think it was, and the last day in Aintree when Tom Scudamore rode him, I thought he was impressive, and I think he can improve, and that was a 2.5 mile, and so this is what similar trip. Paddy's motorbike is interesting. Maybe he hasn't won a whole lot, but as in hasn't beaten a whole lot, but he has been impressive and he keeps improving. But if I have to pick one, I'd go with Tom Lacey and Brian's horse, Cateson.
Interesting. Mike Vince, did you thoughts on this? Arriva Dirce, there you are now, Ronan Groome. He was one, Mike, I think, did you mention him on one of the first, he won first time up this season. Was he one maybe that was on your radar? What do you have in here?
For me, I mean, Arriva Dirce, as what you want to hear the commentator saying, he says Arriva Dirce to his rivals as he kicks 10 lengths clear. I would take a chance each way with one here. Totally unexposed, right down the bottom. Craignish. Nicky Henderson's got 2 in the race. Of course, de Bonville's at Haydock, which we're going to talk about in a bit. Tom Cannon, an interesting booking. Craignish won 2 out of 3. I quite caught my eye when he won a bumper at Market Raisin last June. And then he finished 3rd at Newbury behind a horse called The Big Breakaway. And actually stayed up with The Big Breakaway for some way, finished 3rd, then won again. Been off the track a long time, and there's some talk that he might be close to double figures. If he is in terms of that, I think he's a knocking good each way bet. And I do listen to you say Dan Levant. It's surely Dant Levant, or were you always sent out of French lessons at school because you were talking about Un, Deux, Trois and the Arc de Triomphe being not a monument in Paris, but a race there. But Craignish each way for me at the bottom.
I got kicked out of French after junior cert, Mike Vince. Coming on, well, strong votes just before we do come on for Nicky Henderson. The yard is in good form. I think that's 7+ winners in the last week. So certainly a yard that is banging in the winners recently. Before we come on to the Clarence House Chase, which is a 3:35 at Ascot. It's a matchbook exchange. Clarence House Chase, grade 1 over 2 miles and 1 furlong. Let's hear from Ruth Jefferson, who's our special guest on the show, and she runs Waiting Patiently. So delighted to be joined by North Yorkshire trainer Ruth Jefferson on the Champ.ie podcast. Ruth, welcome to the show and thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Ruth, Waiting Patiently was supplemented for the Clarence House, and I believe he's knocking the doors down at home to run.
Yeah, it came out that King George really, really well in himself, and it was just, we thought about it 2 or 3 weeks in advance, and we just said, look, if he's right, we'll right on Monday morning we'll supplement him. And to be fair, he's, he was a bit of a boyo to ride today, so he must be feeling well in himself.
And his grade 1 win, Ruth, came at Ascot, so the same course back in 2018. And I suppose, would we see maybe a change of tactics back in trip now again to 2 miles and 1 furlong?
Yes, probably. I mean, when he ran at Sandown, it was in the Tingle Creek last year. That was his first run that season, and the false start lit him up a little bit, and he got quite revved up. So Brian took a pull and dropped him back out again. we jumped off a little bit handier that day with it being 2 miles, and I'll imagine we'll do the same again on Saturday.
Yeah, the Clarence House looks a cracker this year, and your lad faced the favourite in the race, Politologue, a couple of times now, and I think he's only been beaten by him once, so has all the form in the book anyway.
Yeah, the time he beat us was when we finished second and third to Min, wasn't it, at Aintree, and patiently come back. He was sick after that run. He doesn't sometimes warn you of these things, and he came back and was full of mucus, and we roughed him off for the season. But to be fair, like Politologue's looked a different horse since they've changed the way they rode him, hasn't he? So for all we've beaten him a few times. He's beaten us the once and all the rest. I just think he's a different horse. They ride him differently, and he's probably holding his form better now, isn't he? Politologue.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned before that he's a very versatile horse now, waiting patiently. But in terms of trip, does it matter to him, or would you have a preferred trip in mind? I mean, his grade 1 was over 2.5 miles at Ascot.
Yeah, no. I mean, he was beat a length in the Tingle Creek, and he's beat 2.5 lengths in a King George. I could pigeonhole him if you want and say, well, he won at 2 mile 5, so he's definitely a 2.5 mile horse. But once you start pigeonholing horses, you start running out of options. And he's a horse who isn't the easiest to keep sound, he isn't the easiest to keep healthy. So rather than start to say, oh, he's a 2 miler or a 2.5 miler or a 3 miler, and that's all we can do, why not run him when he's well? Because historically he's shown he's quite versatile in trip. So why not just run him when he's fit and well, and there's a race there for him?
He's a 10-year-old now, Ruth, and I suppose he's only had the 14 career starts, so there's not an awful lot of mileage on the clock. And like, for people that don't know, what sort of issues has he had over the years, and has that had much of an effect on him?
Well, if you'd rode him out this morning, you wouldn't have thought he was 10.
Yeah.
He's around old. I mean, he come to us having been at Keith Reevely's, and then Keith retired and he came to us. He had 1 or 2 issues whilst at Keith's, just small ones. He basically has poor quality bone. So he's not arthritic as such, but the bone he has isn't the highest quality. So, he's a small horse, but he's a very sort of solid horse. He's big in the shoulder. He's got a very large bum on him. He's more like a sprinter. Just the harder the ground, the more wear and tear his joints take. So when he came to us, he went novice chasing. He won his first 3. He won what would have been this weekend, the Haydock race, the Autocar, when he beat Politologue. And then we found he had a bone spur in his joint, so he went off to have that surgically removed. He came back in the following year. He won the Colin Parker, and then he got head cold. That meant he missed the Paddy Power December Gold Cup. We were going to run him January, the 1st of January at Cheltenham, but we thought we'd maybe give him an extra couple of weeks. So he went to Kempton and won what's now the Silviano Conti and then the Ascot Chase. And he come back from the Ascot Chase with a touch of heat in the leg, where he'd slightly damaged his tendon sheath, so he missed the rest of that season. And then he went straight for the King George in 2018. So, he's just one of those horses. He's just a little bit fragile, and every time he does something, it's something that curtails his season.
So it's a case of run him when he's fit and well. I take that's a large part of the decision then to supplement him here.
You don't expect a horse to take his first run over 3 miles and his first run for a full year as well as he has, but he did. So what's the point of me saving him for another day when, he hasn't just, I know he's ran over 3 miles in the King George, but he hasn't become slow overnight. So yes, dropping back to 2 miles, it's a bit different again, but I can't think of a reason why he wouldn't cope at the trip on the ground. He's fit, he's well, and it gives us more time, if we want to think of going to an Ascot Chase or whether we go to Cheltenham or Aintree or whatever we decide to do, if he's all right in himself.
Like, what sort of a character is he at home, Ruth?
He's a typical Fleming's Firth. Yeah. So he has his own stable and he likes his stable, but it's his stable and you can't go in it without having a reason. So you're going to tack him up, you'll get kicked, you'll get bitten, you'll get squealed at. You're going to feed him and then, you get out of his stable, you don't hang around. He's just typically Just a typical Fleming's-Firth, I think is how I describe him. He is what he is. He's not a horse you maybe go in and give a pat to. You know, like some horses, you know, like a bit of attention. He isn't like that. If you're going into him, then you have to do something with him. You can't go into him to not. Otherwise, he'd just boot you out the stable and ask what you're wasting his time for.
And he's rated 167 now, and I know we spoke about how versatile he is. He has an entry in the Gold Cup. That caught my eye, actually, over 3 miles and 2 furlongs. If it was good soft ground, would you consider that strongly at all, or would it depend, I suppose, what he does on Saturday?
I don't... I suppose it becomes, at the end of the day, it's a joint decision, isn't it? After the King George, Richard was keen for a Gold Cup entry. Then he, sobered up and calmed down and sat and thought about it. It wasn't the fastest run, King George in history, and he was a very fast winner of it, second runner-up. But I just said to Richard, we wasn't keen to give him one, but I said, look, can we give him a Gold Cup entry? Because, we're talking, with 7 weeks till Cheltenham. We don't know what the ground's going to be. We don't know which Irish horses are going to show up. We don't quite, there's a lot still to learn about the Cheltenham races. So I said, why not just give him an entry in all of them, and we can wait until nearer the time before we start, crossing something off or saying we're not doing this or saying doing that. People want an answer, but we're still in January. We've got, nearly another 2 months, really.
And Ruth, Lemon Tea is a horse that ran quite well at Newcastle. What's the plan with him?
He fell first time over fences and he come back a little bit sore. He was, if anything, he was just a bit over exuberant, which he wasn't at home. His schooling at home had been very careful, and then he went racing, and I don't know why, he just turned into a raging bull, I suppose, and it started attacking his fences. Got a bit high, didn't quite get his landing gear out, and then I took him to Kelso, and it was too frozen in my opinion, so I took him out. So I ran him on the all-weather this week. He ran quite nicely, but he'll probably go to Doncaster for a hurdle race next week if he's all right. But he's a horse I like, to be honest.
We might come on to a couple of questions from Twitter, Ruth. Ginge Mondroot asks, would you be confident Waiting Patiently would stay 3 miles and 2 furlongs?
Can't see why I wouldn't. I just think he's a horse that, if you watch him in his races, he's generally a bit keen down over the first couple. Like it sounds stupid, but if you ran him in a July Cup, he'd probably be keen for 2 furlongs before switching off. That's just him. And then once you've got him settled, he just waits then until you ask him to do something. So I wouldn't say he wouldn't stay it. I mean, you never know until you try. But people thought we were mad to run him in a King George when he hadn't run over 2.5 miles. But he stayed that trip fine, albeit it wasn't the fastest run. But I couldn't see why he wouldn't, if I'm honest.
Andrew Blair White has tweeted and says he's a big fan of Clondalk Caitlin last year. We haven't seen her since her chasing debut behind Galvin in October. Is all well with her? What's her long-term targets?
She came back and she was fine, and I was prepping her for a race at Uttoxeter when she come back from the gallops, and we pulled her out to put her in the salt room, and she looked quite stiff. We hoped she'd just tied up, but it was a little bit more severe than that, and although we couldn't find anything on a scan and x-ray, she probably had a stress fracture. She has just started cantering this week, so she'll revert back to hurdles at the end of the season. There's no specific target in mind, but I'd like to get a run or 2 into her before she goes out to grass, and then she'll go back chasing next year.
Yeah, Mike, come to you on this one first. I suppose Politologue, they seem to have found his best trip. He's the Queen Mother winner from last year, albeit, I suppose, a weaker renewal. Winner of the Tingle Creek, but listening to Ruth Jefferson there, Waiting Patiently, a versatile horse. He was doing all his best work at the end of the King George, but comes right back down in trip here. The ground will suit, and he's knocking the doors down at home to run. He was my fancy in here. What about you?
Yeah, I think they can't decide. He's entered in the Gold Cup, the Ryanair, and the Champion Chase. So it's a bit like the Ancient Mariner. He run it one in 3. Don't quite know what he's going to run in. But he was so impressive last time. I will chance here. I'm always a great one at trying to avoid going with the obvious, and Politologue is the obvious. First Flow. Would they be running First Flow in this if they didn't think that he had a chance, and certainly of picking up some decent prize money? I love the horse. I think Kim Bailey's enjoyed a really good season, and there was nothing wrong with his win at Wetherby in the Castleford. There was nothing wrong, albeit a narrow win over a Moolah Goal at Ascot back in November. And of course, you've got to go right the way back. He's won at the places like Carlisle, and I'm looking through his form here, and his 4 wins, 3 of the last 4 have come on. 4 of his last 5 wins have come on heavy ground, and I think he might just upset them here. I think that one thing we're certain of is a good pace. Politologue's got the form, but is he as good in the mud? And Deffy, I mean, I've run out of trying to work Deffy to soy out. Ran a stinker. We all thought that the Champion Chase was a penalty kick, didn't we? After Chac-en-Paul Swan, Altior both came out, flopped that day, flopped on his seasonal return, and they can't find what's wrong with him. That's always the story with these horses. If they run really badly and you find out what's wrong, you actually feel, okay, you can put a line through that form. I'd chance First Flow here.
He's not a 2-miler. That's what's wrong with him. Although he's won this last year. But lads, coming on just on this race here, I mean, Mike mentioned First Flow has won 5 times. The only thing that put me off First Flow, and actually, Mike, I did like him at a bigger price, but you did mention Kim Bailey's had a good first half to the season, but he hasn't had a winner in 25 days. Ronan, you like to take one at a big price, or are you gonna go on with the more obvious in here?
Yeah, it's not a race I'm currently going to have a bet in Barry, I'd say, but I don't think the ground is that soft at Ascot. Just what Mike was saying there, and Politologue, I have no problem with him on soft ground. He's won his last 2 races, so Tingle Creek and the Champion Chase on soft ground, so no problem there. I think he's quite clearly the most likely winner here. He's rock solid at 2 miles, for all that people seem to want to crab him a lot, but he shows up and he gets it done, and you can obviously pick holes in waiting patiently back down at this trip. I think it's hard, though he's a very consistent horse and he always runs his race when he shows up, whatever distance it's over. It's hard to not to go back to his 2-mile race and look at the Tingle Creek and think that he got outpaced there and just ran on late against On the So and Deffy de Soil. So I could see that happening again here. And Deffy de Soil, I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can't really back him at 92. It'd be interesting if there was priced kind of money for him, but he's blown out twice now on his last 2 starts. There's no way anyone can say he's a bet at 92 unless you have that kind of inside information that he's going well. The one I would take a chance on maybe each way, but the dead 8 here is Banyan Destroyer. I've been a fan of him since he came over. He ran second at Cheltenham first time out to a Nicholas horse, Magic Saint, I think it was, ran really well, and then was going quite well in the race Mr. Fisher won last time when he came down 3 out. He jumped quite well after that. I could see him running well. I think the soft ground 2 miles is perfect for him, and even though he has a lot of weight or a lot to find at the ratings, I think he's lightly enough raced. He's a 6-year-old with plenty of scope to improve, so I could see him running well. And when you think the likes of Deffy de Soil and waiting patiently could just blow out here, I think Banyan Destroyer might be the one to pick up the pieces in the straight.
Yeah, an encouraging run, first time up this season. Of course, we fell last time. That's an interesting case there, Ronan. But just on your point about waiting patiently as well, and the Tingle Creek and being outpaced, I think there is going to be a change of tactics this time from speaking to Ruth, and maybe he might be ridden a little bit more forcefully. And I just think he's mega interesting here. When I saw him supplemented, I take him over the front 2 in the market, and but you did say Banyan Destroyer was interesting at a price. Davey, had you a strong opinion in this?
I can't see Politologue being beaten, to be honest. He can't beat the form. He won the Champion Chase. Obviously, Champion Chase fell apart, but he won the Tingle Creek then as well. Like Ronan said, soft ground's ideal for him. If waiting patient, he's going to be ridden a little bit more forcefully by Brian. I think that sets it up even better for Harry Cobden on Politologue. So I'm going to be born and stick with the favourite, but I think he wins. I think waiting patient, his best trip is 2.5 miles.
That was, of course, where his Grade 1 victory came in the Ascot Chase. Waiting patiently for me, Politologue for Davey, Ronan Groome, Banyan Destroyer, and Mike Vince, First Flow. We don't seem to agree on this one here, but lads, moving on to Haydock, which looks like it is going to go ahead. Mike Vince.
Yeah, this is extraordinary. The fact that Haydock hasn't been sunk without trace. Heavy on Monday when horses were entered, and since Monday and heavy ground, they've had 75 millimetres of rain, and it's still raceable. I mean, whether you need a boat here or what, this actually is a good little race. There's only 5 of them. 4 of them were winners last time, and Landon Lad beaten last time. It was the first time he got beat. And there are reasons to back all of them, but I just think the yard's in good nick, and it'd be really nice to see him with a really decent horse to go to war with at the Cheltenham Festival. And I might just go here with Donald McCain's Minella Drama, good winner at Bangor, trounced a field at Sedgefield, but should have trounced a field at Sedgefield, but that was on good ground. It was behind Landin Arbo Lad at Bangor at the end of October. Of course, sadly this weekend it's Bangor in D rather than on D. But he gets a weight concession in a drama, £4, £5 rather from Landin Arbo Lad, enough, I think, to turn the tables.
Yeah, I can't help but agree with you. It was on his first start of the season, Bangor, Mike, as you said, on soft ground when he was beaten by Landon Obo Lad, and he was given £5 that occasion. He's getting it this time around. I thought he was interesting. He looks like one that's progressing, as you said. The yard's in good form. 3-1, I think, is good value here. Davey, did you have thoughts on this?
I agree with the two of you. I think he can turn around the form with Tom Simmons' horse. The last day in Bangor, he was quite keen as well, and it was heavy ground that day. So, like Mike said about the grounds in Haydock on Saturday, it's going to be extremely testing. So I think it's an ideal opportunity for this horse, especially with the weight being flipped around, you know.
Yeah, Ronan, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think Minella Drama is the only real angle into the race. Fair enough, he got beaten by Landon Abo Lad when they met earlier in the season, but I think it's a £12 weight swing now. Rather than Minella Drama conceding Landon Abo Lad £5, he's actually getting £5 off him. So it's a £10 weight swing. So he's done nothing wrong since that. Minella Drama he's won twice, albeit in races that he should have won on the form that he showed there. And I don't see why he would be 3-1 chance and Landon Abolad would be that shorter given that weight difference. For all that this is a tricky little race with 5 last time out winners, and you could be anything really on the ground. So, but Minella Drama I think is the only real angle. 3-1 is fair price.
We couldn't agree on the Clarence House, and we're all agreeing on the first race that we're going to preview at Haydock, which is the Supreme Trial at 1:30. Lads, the 240, which is the Peter Marsh handicap chase, is a grade 2 over 3 miles and 1 furlong. Royal Pagil for Venetia Williams, Richie colours, is 9-4 chance, and plenty of people fancy him for the National Hunt Chase at the Cheltenham Festival. It looks like he might be, I suppose, gone too high now in the handicap or on ratings to be going for a handicap. Sam Brown is a 4-1 chance here for Anthony Honeyball. Sam's Adventure 5-1 from Sevens, bit of support for him. AC Milan is a 7-1 chance. Lamander Pippin for Colin Tizard is an 8-1 chance. Potter's Legend 8-1. Cloud and Goldie is 12-1, and it is 14-1 bar the rest. Mike Vince, dissect.
Thank you. That's the worst hospital pass you've thrown me in a long time trying to work this out. Royal Pigal has looked class in 2 runs, won both of them. Venetia Williams, of course, the time of day. But Charlie Deutsch has gone to Ascot. But Tom Scusa, of course, a decent substitute. Oh, I really haven't got a clue. I mean, this is one of those races where I could sit here for hours and put lines to everything and think it can't win, can't win, can't win. And if you were to push me hard, I quite like the thought of Potter's Legend running a big race, but I am about as confident about this race as I am about you producing a clock next week. I mean, I really have not got a clue, but if you pushed me, I'll go Potter's Legend to win it because I quite liked his first run of the season.
Interesting, Ronan.
Yeah, it's a difficult race to kind of, because you revolve it around Royal Pagil, and he's off a mark of 156 now, and that's a huge difference from the mark he won off the last day, which was £16 lower. But it's interesting, he says in the National Hunt Chase, he's in the Gold Cup as well, so they obviously think quite a lot of him there, Venetia Williams, to give him that sort of entry. And if he went and bolted up here again off a mark of 156, they'd have to start having a think about it, wouldn't they? Yeah, look, it's difficult. That other than that, I do share Mike's kind of enthusiasm for Potter's Legend. There, he won over this course and distance last season, and he's £6 higher now. He's actually £2 out of the weights today because of Royal Pagai's rating, which isn't ideal, but he obviously has the course and distance form to run well. So does Sam's Adventure, who won nicely here the last time. And Sam Brown is an interesting one as well. A lot of people liked him for the Ladbrokes Trophy at the start of the season. He ran nicely, he went third up with Carlisle behind Imperial Aura, and must have had some sort of setback then. Ben Godfrey's taking £5 off him, which will probably help. But yeah, Potter's Legend for me. But very interesting to see how Royal Pagai handles this big step up in the ratings. And if he does, they've got to start thinking about Grade 1s at Cheltenham and maybe not the National Hunt Chase.
Interesting. David, there's a Milan horse in here that I've always kind of liked for Anthony Honeyball, AC Milan. He's only £5 higher over fences. I mean the horses he won first time up this year at Aintree, but the two horses I suppose that's beaten have come out and won since. So he hasn't been disgraced. Look, he might be on a nice mark here. That was just the one I kind of liked in here. Bit of support from as well. 7s from 10s. Rex Dingle up, but he was the one I liked, but not a strong fancy.
No, the only issue I'd have with it, he's been beaten a long way on his last two starts, though, hasn't he? I know he was second. Well, there was only 3 runners the last day in Plumpton, but full back is decent enough horse. But he's bet 31 lengths, and I think he's bet a distance by Next Destination. Now I know that's not the worst form in the world. When you seen him last week, he was very impressive last week in Warwick. I like Sam's Adventure here. I know Connections were asked for reason for improvement the last day and couldn't give any reason for it. Sure, look, these things can happen, can't they? He was pulled up for the first time of the season. But he looked good form last year. Very good form last year, and course form and that, and the heavy ground, and it is a difficult race to pick one, but he'd be the one I'd be going with.
Interesting. Bouvardere returns, lads. It's a 3-runner race, the 3:15, Grade 2 at Haydock. Mike, Vince, thoughts?
Has to win, will hate the ground, and has the class to squelch to victory. But you can read, it's pointless trying to read anything into it. Just above all, rejoice he's back, and think about him versus Epatante at the head of the British squad, trying to see off Messrs Mullins and Elliott at Cheltenham in March. But with only 3 runners, anything can happen. I hope he jumps a clear, and I hope he does win. He should win, but he will hate the ground, because by then the ground will be well chewed up.
Is it absolutely odds on that he definitely runs here? I'm not even sure the way Nicky Henderson's behaved this season with the likes of Altior on heavy ground. Like as
you were just waiting to get that dig in, Ronan Groome. You were just waiting. It was in the can, as Dunphy says, waiting to come out.
Yeah, I know, but like, is the late night Friday scratch out of the question? Absolutely not, given how soft it is at Haydock. And I just don't think we learn much. Banyan's a nice horse. He always seems to run his race, and it's not out of the question that he runs to his mark and runs well. And it's whether Bouvardere is the force of old, but he should be. And even if he isn't, he could still win because he's getting £6 off him. Not a betting race for me, and I don't think we learn a huge deal even if Bouvardere does win.
Lads, this side of the Irish Sea on Navan, we've a good card on Saturday. The feature race probably there. Handicap hurdle Grade B. That's over 2.5 miles. Davey, I might come to you on Navan. I think you've maybe 1 or 2 fancies there.
Yeah, I like a horse in the very competitive maiden hurdle. The horse I like is called Garda Soul for Gordon Elliott, Mark Walsh, JP McManus. Probably disappointing on his run the last day in Fairyhouse, beaten by Hook Up. He was an impressive winner of his point-to-point in Boris House. So I give this horse another chance, because I know they thought a lot of him before his point-to-point, and they were disappointed with him the last day. So, but it is a very competitive maiden hurdle. I'd say you'll see a couple of good horses coming out of this. The handicap hurdle, the Grade B, very good race. I actually met Kerry Bryan today, this morning. She has Winston C over from the United States. So they're throwing them in the deep end, but it's great to see them coming over and taking on the Irish horses. A lot of horses that they've bought from point to points. But if I was to pick one, Silver Sheen's an interesting one. Long time off the track though, 378 days. But I like Mark Walsh's horse for Eddie Harty. I won't try and pronounce it because Mike will only get onto me. But yeah, it's easy to find there. Mark Walsh there in the handicap. So that's what I like in Navan on Saturday.
Yeah, and Thurles on Sunday, lads. We have 2 Grade 2s on the card. What used to be the Kinloch Braids, the Horse and Jockey Hotel Chase. Grade 2 over 2.5 miles. And
yeah, in the Grade 2, the Horse and Jockey, I'm a big fan of Ellie May. She was a horse that I put in my horse to follow list at the start of the season, and I'm really interested to see how she gets on. I don't know how she managed to get beat the last day by Build Me Up Buttercup by a nose. I don't know what horse can manage to get beat by Build Me Up Buttercup by a nose, given that one's reluctance to put her head in front sometimes. But that was over hurdles, and she's come back over fences now. She beat Cut the Mustard last season, and she beat Augusta Gold as well, who I think has a huge chance in the big handicap hurdle at Navan on Saturday, and is a real rock solid kind of barometer of where mares are at. Ellie May beat her quite well, so I think she's an outside chance for the Mayor's Chase now, and she could book her ticket with a good run at Thurles on Sunday. And the other horse I liked at Thurles was in the W.T. O'Grady Memorial Novice Hurdle there. Always a nice race. And I think Gentleman's Game, point-to-point winner at Curramore, did it really nicely on his track debut at Cork, won by 21 lengths on heavy ground. So I'm very interested to see how he goes in that race. So nice card at Thurles and Navan. So looking forward to it, Barry.
we're going to come on to Naps and NBs of the weekend. Mike, Vince, I say you're leading the way at this stage for Naps and NBs of the season. We'll let you lead the way anyway. What's your Nap and NB of the weekend?
I'm going to go to Ascot for the Nap, and I'm going to go for Venetia Williams in the 2 mile 5 furlong chase, and I'm going to go for Espoir de Guy, who destroyed a field in extraordinary style over this trip back in November. Then slightly disappointed last time, but maybe it was over 3 miles back in trip. Charlie Dorsch is on board. That's the Nap. And I'm going to go to Taunton. I'm going to Taunton races on Saturday for their big day. And the Nichols runner Amour de Nuit in the 2:45 handicap hurdle is the next best. So Espoir de Guy, Ascot, Nap, Amour de Nuit, Taunton, next best.
Ronan Groome, fire away.
150 Ascot, Janica, Nap, so much in his favour. I think he run a huge race. 7-1, I think, is just about fair. And Navan, 157, Augusta Gold. I think she's very, very, very well handicapped, and I can't see her out of the frame for my next best.
Ronan Groome, I agree with yourself. My Nap of the weekend is Janica. As I said, he's come right back down with his mark of 147 over hurdles. First time up, wind up. Nicky Henderson's yard in cracking form. And MB is Manila Drama. Sam Twiston Davis and Donald McCrane team up. I think he will turn around the form with the favourite. He's getting £5. He was given £5 from the last day, so 3-1. I think his value at Haydock. I think he'll have no problem on the ground as well. Davey, you're napping MB weekend?
My nap is bit boring. It's Politologue. I think he's the bet of the weekend. And my NB is a horse called Fruit and Nuts, and he runs tomorrow in Musselburgh in the bumper for Brian Hughes and Donald McCain. He's 6-1, 7-1 in places, so I like him.
Interesting pick, Davy Boland. That concludes the, I suppose, Champ.ie episode 13 for the season, lads. We battled through. We did have technical difficulties. We'll see how it comes out. But listen, thanks very much. And we will be back next week for episode number 14.